I don't usually make videos responding to atheism. Not because I'm afraid of atheism by any means, or I'm not confident in Christianity, but simply because I think that a lot of, responses to atheism are already out there. And that's like, I could put my own thing out, but at the end of the day, like, there are a lot of people already putting out some of the stuff I would say. Nonetheless, I thought that, I encountered something that I'm sure a lot of you guys have encountered before. But I haven't really seen too many people respond the way that I would suggest. So, I was a friend of mine on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. She posted just a picture of herself before she was going to church, and she just jokingly said, like, "Oh, you're it's really cold out here, and if you're not going to church, your Scandinavian ancestors would be disappointed in you." Like, clearly a joke, like not really taking things seriously. But for some reason, she got a bunch of these people in her responses that are like, "Oh, you're just part of a cult, and you are absolutely blinded." And so I started, interacting with that person just for fun, because clearly they didn't really know anything about religion and the way of, the way religion works. And I started talking like, well, why? Well, what demonstrates that, we're in a cult? Like, what exactly is cultish about the behavior of just kind of, showing up to church when it's cold out? You know what I mean? Stuff like that. And, I didn't really get any real responses to this kind of stuff. The thing I was told was, "Oh, you're just blinded, and you are totally in the grasp of the cult, and you can't think for yourself." And I think this is a general thing I find that a lot of atheists like to do and say. They often like to belittle religious people and say that, because you believe something that is supported by an institution and you have influence from that institution, therefore you don't have free will in choosing these things. Number one, of course, and this is what a lot of apologists will respond with, simply like that's not logically valid or sound. You don't go, it depends on the way you structure the argument. You could structure it, one way to be invalid, but overall, any kind of structure of the argument, I think, would just be unsound. So what I find is that, that's one way, is just be like, well, that's a genetic fallacy of sorts, where it's like, just because I believe it for this reason doesn't mean it's automatically false. As a whole, you could say my reasoning is incorrect, but you can't say because my reasoning is bad, therefore my conclusion is automatically false. That's not the way that logical argumentation works. But the way that I would personally respond, and I did respond to this person, is simply being like, that's funny, because I have read, Spinoza, Locke, Hume, Kant, Hegel, a bit of Hegel, just a lot of people who, and Bertrand Russell and others, who it's like, these people are clearly opposed to Christianity. And they are, much more advanced intellectually than I think a lot of modern new atheists are in their responses. And this is simply just a pragmatic response of like, well, you're just wrong. Like, you're just incorrect here. Like, I actually, converted to this on the basis of my own choice in some sense, because I grew up evangelical. No one else in my family's Lutheran. I'm the only one, and I've probably read more atheists than that person has, kind of thing. But I bring this all up to make a general statement that I think actually one of the most important things for, Christian apologists or Christian apologetics, again, I hesitate saying that, but one of the things, just because it can be annoying, I find apologetics to be an annoying discipline in a lot of ways, as I've mentioned before. But one of the things that, helps, I think, bring people to Christianity or make them at least more open to it is simply to demonstrate that one is relatively, at least relatively apt in philosophical discourse. And the reason I say that is because I think implicitly and explicitly in the case of like that kind of atheists and others, a lot of the conception of Christians is, oh, these are people that are blinded. They just believe what they believe because they've been told this and they haven't interacted with other people. I think simply demonstrating that you know what you're talking about makes a lot of people more open to the Christian faith. I'm just dead serious on that. I have found that, instead of making arguments for the existence of God, like I could throw arguments for God's existence out there. That'll work on some people. It really will. But I honestly find that so much of what makes people more open is not simply throwing, here are our best arguments. At some people that is necessary, but a lot of them, it's just simply showing them, I believe in God, I'm not a moron. If you just show that you actually have a general working knowledge of concepts in philosophy of religion and in metaphysics and stuff like it, you can somewhat demonstrate that you can be normal and be a Christian. And I think that opens up a lot of people's minds. Again, not everybody is, but this is part of the reason I'm trying to put out stuff on like metaphysics and philosophy in general, because I think that simply for the sake of the Christian witness, knowing this stuff is valuable. And I don't think that, like I earlier alluded to, and I've mentioned in a video a long time ago, that I have problems with like apologists in a lot of ways. But one of the things that I think I'm really trying to push people towards is not simply being an apologist, not only being into like arguments for God's existence, not only being into, defenses of Christianity, but being into actual metaphysics. Because Christianity, in terms of philosophy, like obviously it is the greatest conclusion of it, but there are a lot of other things that you can do with philosophy that are valuable and interesting and do contribute in some ways to, your understanding of Christianity. So like one of the questions that, this doesn't affect like your status of your faith, and it certainly isn't an argument for God, but just stuff like the unicity versus the plurality of substantial forms in a single substance. That's an interesting question. I have genuinely found that as I talk about these basic things that are honestly unrelated, at least directly, unrelated to God, in the immediate sense, people are like genuinely more open to Christianity because somebody intelligent is more into this, therefore maybe it's more viable. And I've seen that with friends of mine who know much more about it than I do. And so I make this just trying to push people. Like, if you really want to make a Christian witness to maybe people that aren't militant atheists, but people who generally have a condescending attitude towards Christianity, I think one of the proper ways to do it is to have a working knowledge, even of things that aren't necessarily directly tied to philosophy of religion. Philosophy of religion, of course, is very valuable, but I think if you have a general understanding of things like metaphysics and physics, either in the classical sense, not necessarily the content of the classical stuff, not like Newtonian physics. I'm not saying you need to know that stuff, but simply the domain of physics being that which Aristotle talked about. If you know that, or even if you know modern physics that you find, in like Einstein and others, then you're going to honestly be impressing to some people. I'm really not trying to make this video like to brag about myself. I'm not, because, no one said to me, oh, you know so much, therefore I've converted. But I have found personally that as I have been more open about philosophical commitments and more open about philosophical discussions, even ones that are unrelated to the existence of God, people, knowing that I am Christian, have been more open to Christianity because they've seen, you're not just blind to this if you're considering questions that are very in-depth and you are doing the actual philosophical discourse. So, even though a lot of apologists correctly note that simply because somebody believes something insofar as they are told to believe it, like they grew up that way, or maybe they can't give like a specific justification for it in terms of God's existence, apologists are correct that argument doesn't therefore entail that, God does not exist in Christianity is false. It's simply it's simply unsound. Nonetheless, though, I don't think that's necessarily the most convincing argument to bring up to somebody, because the overall argument they're making isn't simply, you're being told this, therefore, I think what they're trying to say is somebody cannot be religious and be intelligent. Like, and the fact that most people who are religious are not intelligent indicates that, you're not, it may be false. So I think one of the good responses to it is to simply know what you're talking about in a variety of things. I've seen a lot of people who, not around me personally, but I have simply encountered people who have said, maybe I started questioning this stuff when I realized you can actually have intellectual Christians. And that's part of what kept me in the faith, was not only saying, I agree with the conclusions of theism, but I noticed that there's a solid philosophical tradition of theists. So yeah, that's just what I have to say. Let me know if this stuff has worked for you before. I'm just curious. Have a good one.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching another Scholastic Lutherans video. If you'd like to support us, you can follow us on Twitter at Gerhard's Ghost, or contribute on Patreon at Scholastic Lutherans. There you'll get access to our Telegram chat and other perks. Links can be found in the description. Subscribe, like, or leave a comment, and have a nice day.